He thought it was just another call. Nothing urgent, nothing dangerous, just a patrol near the edge of town, near the train yard, where no one went anymore, except maybe runaways, or ghosts from the past. But then, his dog stopped walking, not slowed, not hesitated, just stopped, ears sharp, body frozen, nose in the air, like it smelled something no one else could. Officer Mark bent down, whispered something into his partner's ear, but Rex didn't move, only stared past the broken fence, toward the old supply station near the end of the track, long abandoned, half collapsed, and strangely quiet. He tried tugging the leash, but Rex growled, low, deep, like a warning, like a promise. That's when he heard it, a sound so faint, he thought he imagined it. A whisper, no, a whimper, and then, a voice, barely a voice, just breath, and fear, and something that sounded like, please, please save my mommy. His chest locked, his breath caught. He dropped the leash. Rex ran. Mark followed without thinking, his flashlight cutting through the dusty dark, his boots pounding across gravel and rot, his heart louder than both. He found Rex at the edge of a crumbling staircase, ears up, tail still, pointing down into the shadows below. And then he heard it again, closer now, clearer, the voice of a child, a little girl, but not crying, not screaming, just whispering, like she was scared to wake something up. She said it again, please, please save my mommy. He moved slowly, hand on his sidearm, eyes adjusting to the dark. The stairwell smelled like old rust and wet paper, but underneath it was something else, a sharpness, like sweat, and fear, and metal. When he reached the bottom, he saw her, a little girl, maybe 6, curled behind a pile of crates, shivering, hugging a torn backpack to her chest, bare feet scraped and red, hair tangled across her face. And Rex, the dog, sitting beside her, silent, watchful, guarding her like she belonged to him. Mark knelt. He didn't speak right away. He knew better. Kids who hide in places like this don't trust easily. They've learned not to. But Rex nudged her, gently, and she looked up. Her eyes were wide, like she hadn't blinked in hours, like the fear had frozen her in place. Then she whispered, he's gonna kill her. He said he would. He said no one would stop him this time. Mark didn't ask questions. Not yet. He radioed it in, called for backup, called for medical, but something in his gut told him this wasn't going to wait. He tried asking her, where's your mom? What's his name? But she only shook her head, again and again. He's gonna kill her. He's gonna kill her. He picked her up, light as a feather, and Rex followed close behind, back into the night, into the patrol car. He wrapped her in a jacket, held her hand while she shook, but her eyes never closed. Where is she? He asked again. Where is your mommy? The girl pointed, toward the warehouses. He took the corner fast, tires sliding, adrenaline rising. Somewhere, in those rusting buildings, a woman was about to die, and the only person who knew was too small to stop it, unless they got there first. They pulled up near the main storage lot. Half the lights were broken, half the walls covered in graffiti, but Rex barked loud, twice, then ran ahead. Mark followed, gun drawn, eyes sharp, breath steady, but it was too quiet, too still, until Rex stopped at a side door and growled, low and dangerous. The door was ajar. Someone had been here recently. He stepped inside, headlight raised, and there she was, a woman, tied to a pipe, mouth taped, wrist raw, blood on her blouse, eyes swollen with panic, and standing over her, with something in his hand, was a man. He turned when the door creaked, eyes wild, knife raised. Mark didn't hesitate. He shouted, drop it, but the man lunged. And that's when Rex moved. The sound was fast, violent, like thunder in a small room. Rex slammed into him, teeth bared, forced like a train, knocking the man sideways, knife clattering to the ground. Mark tackled him, cuffed him, hard and fast. Before the guy could even scream, he pulled the tape from the woman's mouth, cut her hands loose. She sobbed, not words, just air, just relief. And then the girl was there, running, arms open. Mama. The woman crumbled, held her tight, like she never thought she'd see her again, like she wasn't sure she was real. Paramedics arrived. Backup filled the space. But in the corner, Mark sat down, let the weight fall off his chest. Rex came to him, sat at his side, quiet, still, But Mark just reached over and whispered, "Good boy." They didn't say much after that. Not at first. Too much adrenaline. Too much fear. But when the woman finally found her breath, she said something Mark never forgot. She said, he was going to do it. This time, he really was. He kept us locked away for days. Every time she cried, he hit her. And I thought if I just stayed quiet, he'd calm down. But he didn't. He just got worse. I told her to run, to hide. But I never thought she'd find someone in time. She looked at her daughter, then at the dog, then at Mark. "I don't know how she found you, but thank you." Mark didn't answer. He didn't need to. But inside, something shifted. This wasn't just another call. This wasn't just another rescue. It was something else. Something that was far from over. The little girl wouldn't let go of her mom. Not even when the medics tried to check her. Not even when they wrapped a bandage around her mom's bleeding arm. Mark stood by the squad car, watching, arms crossed, mind racing. Rex sat beside him, quiet, alert, eyes on the girl like she was still his assignment. The woman's name was Claire. She was 33, and her voice shook when she said it. Like saying her own name felt foreign now. Her daughter's name was Emma, just 6, but she spoke like someone much older, as if fear had fast-forwarded her childhood, as if hiding in silence had replaced bedtime stories. When Mark asked what happened, Claire only said one thing. He was supposed to love us. Officers took the man away in handcuffs. No one said his name out loud, but Mark had seen his kind before. Rage in his eyes, control in his hands, and something darker in his silence. Rex had left a deep gash in the man's shoulder, and Mark didn't feel sorry, not even a little. It was late, well past midnight, when the girl finally spoke again. She looked up at Mark and said, "Do you have to take her away?" He blinked. "No, no one's taking her away." The girl nodded, and then, in a voice that cracked like dry leaves, she asked, "Can we go home now?" Mark and Claire both looked at each other, but neither answered, because home didn't exist anymore. The safe house was quiet, a small bungalow on the edge of the city, owned by the department, used only for cases like this, for survivors, for nights that couldn't be explained in a report. Mark sat on the porch with Rex, sunrise barely touching the sky, his uniform wrinkled, his eyes raw. Inside, Emma finally slept, her arm over her mother's waist, as if she still needed proof that she was safe. Claire hadn't spoken much, but when she did, her voice carried weight. He used to be kind, until he wasn't. I stayed for Emma. I thought I could protect her, but I was wrong. I didn't know how much she'd seen, until she ran, until she found you. Mark didn't know what to say. He wasn't a therapist. He was just a man with a badge, and a dog who listened better than most people did. He wanted to say, "You did protect her. You're still protecting her." But what came out was different. He said, "She saved you too." And Claire nodded. Just once. But it was enough. The next day was paperwork. Long, brutal, necessary. But the headlines were worse. Child saves mother from domestic attack. K-9 officer praised for heroic intervention. They used Rex's photo. Tongue out, ears up. The hero of the moment. But they didn't show Emma. And that was deliberate. Mark made sure of it. Because children who survive monsters don't need their faces on front pages. Social services came, but not like they usually did. This time, they listened. They watched Emma cling to her mom. And they saw what Mark already knew. They didn't need to be separated. They needed time, and safety, and space to breathe again. They were granted temporary protected housing, and Mark offered to check in on them personally. Not because it was protocol, but because he couldn't imagine walking away. Rex loved the visits. Emma brought him treats. Claire smiled a little more every time. But something lingered in the air. Something unspoken. Not between them, but around them. Because the man they'd arrested wasn't speaking either. Not to his lawyer. Not to the court. He sat in silence. And that silence was starting to worry Mark. A week later, Mark got a call. A second girl. Same age. Different town. Found hiding behind a dumpster. Whispering something that made his stomach drop. "Please save my mommy." Mark didn't believe in coincidence. He believed in patterns. In escalation. He dug deeper. Requested files. Looked into old cases. What he found made his blood run cold. The man they arrested wasn't just Claire's ex. He'd changed his name 3 times in 5 years. Moved across state lines. Everywhere he went, he left behind a mother and a child. And none of them had ever spoken up. Not until Claire. Not until Emma. He wasn't done. Not by a long shot. And Mark knew, deep in his gut, this was only the beginning. Emma was playing in the backyard with Rex. Claire was folding laundry, trying to feel normal again. When Mark pulled up in his car, he stepped out slowly, hat in hand, expression unreadable. Claire stepped onto the porch, brows furrowed. "What is it?" she asked. Mark looked at Emma, then back at Claire, and finally said, "He didn't act alone." Claire's face went pale. Her hands trembled. She said, "What do you mean?" Mark answered, "He had someone helping him, someone watching, someone who was supposed to be close to you." Claire stepped back, heart pounding, eyes darting. "Who?" And Mark said, "Your sister's boyfriend." The silence that followed was heavy, so heavy, you could hear Rex growl low in the distance. As if he felt it too, Claire collapsed onto the step, hand over her mouth, her eyes filling. "I let him babysit. I let him drive Emma. I trusted him." And Mark sat beside her, his voice steady. "It's not your fault, but we need to act fast. Emma's not safe until he's in custody." Claire stood up, wiped her face, and walked back into the house. She didn't say a word, but the way she held her daughter that night spoke volumes. Not again. Not ever again. Emma was quiet again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was something else. Something watchful. Like she could feel what the adults weren't saying out loud. She stayed close to Rex, held onto his fur while he rested near the kitchen door. Her eyes never left the hallway, never blinked too long. Claire had called her sister, told her to stay away, said something about an emergency, something vague, but the silence on the other end of the line told her enough. He knew, and now, so did she. Mark had officers watching the building, unmarked cars parked near the back, just in case. He didn't tell Claire everything, not yet, but he knew what they were dealing with. Not just a man who hurt women, but a man who groomed trust, who made himself invisible until it was too late, who used people close to his victims to get even closer. And now, he had been close to Emma. That's what kept Mark up that night. The idea that someone like that had held the little girl's hand, maybe tied her shoes, maybe listened to her talk about her favorite colors, while hiding something darker behind his smile. That morning, a black car pulled up down the block, stayed for 20 minutes, didn't move. Rex noticed first. His head lifted, ears perked, a low growl built in his chest. Emma stood by the window, watching, not scared, not surprised, just quiet. "That man came in that car once," she said softly, "when Mommy was sleeping." Mark froze. "What did he do?" he asked gently. Emma looked up at him, then leaned closer, and whispered, "He looked at me, but not like you do, not like nice." Mark didn't wait. He gave the signal. Officers moved in, but by the time they reached the black car, it was gone, left nothing, not even a plate. But something changed after that. Emma stopped smiling again. Claire stopped sleeping. And Mark, he couldn't stop thinking, what if they were being watched? Right now, 2 days passed, then 3. They were moved to a secondary safe house. This one deeper in the city, closer to department headquarters. Reinforced windows, 24-hour surveillance. But Mark knew, walls didn't stop ghosts. On the 4th night, Emma woke up screaming. Mark and Claire rushed in, Rex already at her side. She kept saying, "He was in the hallway. He was here." He whispered through the door. Mark checked everything. No sign of forced entry, no cameras triggered. But Emma wouldn't calm down until Rex jumped onto the bed, laid his head across her chest, and stayed there all night. The next morning, Mark requested something rare. Personal surveillance authority. Not for the suspect, but for the little girl. Because if Emma was right, if someone was slipping past their protection, then nothing else mattered. Not until he was caught. That afternoon, Claire's sister showed up, unannounced, angry, loud, demanding answers. Why was Claire hiding? Why was her boyfriend being blamed? Mark watched her carefully, listened to every word. But what caught his attention wasn't what she said. It was what she refused to say. She never asked about Emma. Not once. After she left, Emma looked up at Mark and said, "She never liked me. Her boyfriend told her I was spoiled. He said my mommy lets me be the boss. But he liked when I cried." Mark's stomach turned. He excused himself, went outside, and called his supervisor. "I'm pulling the file," he said. "Everything on this man. Every phone he's used. Every friend he's had. Every job he's lied about. Because this isn't just domestic. This is bigger. He's done this before. and she's the only one who remembers. That night, a camera caught movement behind the neighbor's fence, too fast to identify, but Rex went ballistic, barking, snarling, clawing at the door. Mark grabbed his weapon, tore through the backyard, Rex in front of him like a storm. But no one was there, only footprints, and a cigarette, still warm. They were running out of time. Claire packed bags that night, her hands shaking, her voice brittle. We can't live like this. Emma deserves better. She deserves to be a kid, not someone who has to save me every week. Mark wanted to stop her, but he knew the fear was real. He knew what it felt like to chase shadows until they swallowed you whole. He stood there, in the doorway, watching her fold the last blanket. But then, Emma tugged his sleeve. Her eyes were calm, but serious. Don't let her leave. He's waiting for that. Mark bent down. How do you know? Emma pointed to the corner, where Rex was now standing. He only barks when he smells him. And just then, the dog growled again. But not at the door, not at the window, at the vent. Mark turned, gun drawn, slow steps. He yanked the grate off the wall. And inside, taped to the metal, was a phone. Recording. Audio. Maybe video. No signal, but still running. They were being watched. From inside, he called backup. The safe house was no longer safe. And now they knew. This wasn't just a predator. This was someone who had planned every detail. Someone who had been inside long before they ever arrived. And worse, someone who wasn't working alone. Mark didn't say goodbye that night. He just looked at Emma, then at Claire, and promised one thing. I won't let him touch either of you. Not ever again. Emma nodded once, then whispered, but he's not the only one, is he? There's another bad man. Mark froze. How do you know? She looked down at Rex and said, he's not barking at the phone. He's barking at the officer who found it. Chapter 3 ends here. The line between trust and betrayal has now broken. Chapter 4 begins from this final second, and everything will unravel. Mark stared at the officer who found the phone, the one Rex was barking at. A deep unease settled in his chest. How could someone he trusted be part of this nightmare? He called his supervisor again, demanded a full internal review, because now the danger wasn't just outside. It was inside the very team sworn to protect Claire and Emma. Claire held Emma close, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep, while Mark and Rex watched every shadow, waiting for the next move. The new threat was invisible, a ghost in the system, feeding lies and watching their every breath. A betrayal deeper than any wound. Emma looked up at Mark one night, eyes fierce but tired. I'm not scared anymore, she said, because Rex is with me. Mark nodded, but he knew the fight wasn't over. Not yet. Days passed in a blur of meetings and surveillance. Mark and a small trusted team worked tirelessly, uncovering the network. A web of men like the one Claire escaped. All connected, all dangerous. One evening, Mark got a call from the safe house. Emma had disappeared. Panic gripped his heart. He raced back, only to find Claire frantic. Emma's small bed empty, the window wide open. A note left on the pillow. Trust no one. Mark felt the world tilt. This was the moment, the nightmare's darkest turn. But Rex was already sniffing the air, tracking a faint scent. Mark grabbed his gear and followed, his heart pounding, every second counting. They moved fast through the city streets, a silent chase in the night, until finally, Rex stopped, alerted, at an abandoned warehouse. Mark entered carefully, gun ready, and there, in the shadows, was Emma, but not alone. She was safe, but scared, her eyes wide with tears, and beside her, the man they thought was trusted, the officer Rex had barked at. Mark shouted, "Drop your weapon." The officer's face twisted, a mixture of fear and rage. He lunged, but Rex was faster. The dog tackled him to the ground. Mark cuffed him quickly, relief crashing through him like a wave. Emma ran into Mark's arms, crying. I knew he was bad. Claire arrived moments later, and the reunion was raw and real. A mother holding her daughter, a community rallying around them. Weeks later, the network was dismantled, the danger removed, and slowly, life began to heal. Mark stood outside the safe house, watching Emma play with Rex, her laughter like music, her smile a fragile but fierce promise. Claire approached, hand in hand with Emma, her eyes shining with gratitude and strength. "Thank you for never giving up," she said softly. Mark smiled. No one fights alone here. The dog sat proudly at his side, A hero without words, but with a heart that saved 2 lives and sparked a chain reaction no one expected. And though the scars remained, hope was stronger, because sometimes the smallest voices and the bravest dogs can change everything.